From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. A tiny emerald green insect that bores under the bark of ash trees is spreading in Colorado. The emerald ash borer has been making its way around the Front Range for the last decade. It damages ash trees and often kills them. And this year, it's been spotted in Denver. Ash trees make up about 1 in every 6 trees in so-called urban forests along the Front Range. So we wondered, what can we do to protect ash trees and even fight back against this pest? Kareem Garby is a horticulture specialist with the CSU Extension who's been on our show before. He joined me to talk about the emerald ash borer and give a more specific idea of what this so-called green menace looks like.
Emerald ash borer are pretty small insects, like less than an inch. They've got a bit of like a bullet-shaped body, almost like a pentagon that's got 5 sides to them. But you're likely not to see one in person ever. I mean, unless a tree is really heavily infested.
Yeah, because they're burrowing underneath the bark. Now, people with an infested tree often notice the damage caused by the emerald ash borer before they see any actual insects. So can you talk about that a bit?
That's correct. Yeah, you're probably going to see the symptoms of decline before you will see emerald ash borer. We talk about crown dieback, looking at the top of the tree to see damage. Because if there is any kind of decline, it's going to manifest at the top because that's where the water has to travel the farthest to get. It's usually the first part of the tree that suffers when they're in decline.
And how does the damage happen? What is the bug doing inside an ash tree?
Yeah, the emerald ash borer larva is burrowing just beneath the bark of the tree, but on the tree's like vascular tissue for transporting water. And so by chewing into it, and you get enough damage, they essentially girdle the tree. They're kind of like choking that water connecting tissue so the tree cannot get water nutrients to its upper extremities.
Ooh, kind of like strangling its water supply a little bit.
Exactly.
The emerald ash borer is an invasive species. Where did it come from, Kareem, and how long has it been in the U.S.?
Yeah, emerald ash borer is native to like northeastern Asia. They arrived in the U.S. in the early 2000s, and since then they've been spreading. And as you know, they were previously restricted to more like the Boulder Longmont area as of like 2018. And then we've been finding infestations popping up around the Denver area for the past year or so. But this sighting, as you may know, this is the first one kind of in the heart of Denver, in Congress Park.
How do they spread?
Emerald ash borer can spread a couple ways. One is through transporting infested firewood. So if you are going to be collecting any kind of firewood, please use that wood locally. If you're going to use wood for furniture, firewood, use it where you collected it from. Don't move wood around. EAB can also spread from infested trees to uninfested trees.
Treating a tree that is infested with these bugs is not something homeowners can do on their own, right? What should an owner do if they suspect their ash tree might be infected?
That's correct. Yeah, they cannot treat this thing themselves. If they suspect that their tree has emerald ash borer or their tree is in decline, they should contact either a local arborist or someone from an extension office like myself to come out and evaluate the tree and see, does it really need to be treated? If a tree is healthy enough, you can hold off on treating it. And then if it does get infected with emerald ash borer, there's an insecticide that I'll mention in a second that can actually kind of cure it of an existing infestation.
Okay, so you call an arborist who can use pesticides, right? What are those like?
Yes. So the insecticides for treating emerald ash borer are only available to licensed arborists. The insecticides in question, there's a couple options, but really the gold standard when it comes to emerald ash borer control is an insecticide called emamectin benzoate. First off, it's applied as an injection. We literally put needles into the side of the tree.
Wow.
And then this chemical is now absorbed throughout the entire canopy if the tree is healthy enough to move it around.
Okay.
And it's really the gold standard because it can provide protection for 2 to 3 years. And it generally costs around $200 to $300 per tree.
And it sounds like it's kind of a complicated process to get it in there.
Yes, yeah. Only the licensed arborist has access not only to the insecticide itself, but also to the specialized equipment to apply it. They have special needles, not a syringe that you find at the doctor.
Okay.
And you also need to make sure that your tree is really well watered. For this chemical to move throughout the tree needs to have water to move it around.
Kareem, let's say I hear from one of my neighbors that their ash tree is infected. I have a healthy ash tree in my yard. Should I go into emergency mode and call an arborist right away?
Not necessarily. The presence of an EAB-infested tree near a healthy tree does not necessarily make that healthy tree more attractive to emerald ash borer. I would still monitor the health of your tree very closely and prune out any dead limbs. Those dead limbs can be a fertile breeding ground for emerald ash borer. But as long as your ash tree is in good health and you're keeping up with proper watering, you're not stressing it by damaging the trunk, walking on the roots too much, you don't have to treat it immediately. I would still monitor the health. If you see decline, then reassess.
Okay. Kareem, what is the point of no return for an infested tree? When should I give up on the tree?
That's a great question. The general rule of thumb is when we have more than 40% dieback of the crown, of the tree's foliage.
Okay.
That can be hard to estimate. That's why I encourage potential homeowners to contact an arborist or myself, because not only are we looking for dead branches, but also like thinning branches. If the tree is less full than it normally should be, that can also be a sign that we're getting close to that 40%.
We mentioned earlier that ash trees make up roughly 15% of the forested areas in Colorado cities and towns. How worried are you about losing a large amount of our urban tree canopy to these insects?
I am pretty worried. Ash trees are kind of like a characteristic Colorado tree. They just perform really well in our really hot, dry climate.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen neighborhoods that have lost all their street trees or ash trees, and they've lost like all of their urban tree canopy. Now to go for a walk, it's blazing hot. So it is a major threat, and I don't want to be alarmist, but all of Denver is within the flight radius of emerald ash borer. They can fly, I think, 5 to 15 miles.
Oh.
Yeah, we are all at risk. It's a question of how do we manage that risk?
Yeah. Well, I mean, given that, the emerald ash borer is probably likely to expand its footprint in the future, is there anything we can do on a larger scale to stop the spread?
Do not move firewood, not move wood in general to new areas.
Mm-hmm.
If your tree is high risk, to have it treated. If your tree is not a candidate for treatment, then please have it removed as soon as possible and have the wood chipped. And you can also engage in what we call shadow planting. If you have an ash on your property and you really like it, but you don't want to take it out just yet, you can maybe have it treated and then plant another tree nearby and then let that tree kind of mature and get larger. And then once you're satisfied with its height and width, then you can remove this declining ash tree.
Okay, so we don't have to go rip out all of our ash trees yet. Just keep an eye on them.
Yep.
That's Kareem Garby with CSU Extension talking about the threat of the emerald ash borer, which is spreading along the Front Range. We'll put a link to more information about the insect from our friends at CSU Extension in our show notes and at KUNC.org. We'll also include links to recent interviews we've done about 2 other pests, the Japanese beetle and the miller moth. Because, hey, we love talking about bugs here on In The NoCo. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thank you so much for listening.